Now, a new analysis shows that the 6-ton iconic altar stone at the heart of Stonehenge, the discovery shows that its construction was a far greater collaborative effort than scientists believe.
New scans of Stonehenge have revealed a truth that is actually terrifying. While we thought we understood these ancient ruins, a neural network just proved we were looking at it all wrong. The way the stones catch sound and follow the moon is not an accident. It was a plan made with perfect logic and skills that have been lost to time.
The fact that we now know that Stonehenge was part of a much larger superstructure indicates to me that we've only barely scratched the surface. What did it all mean?
It has been missing for years, but this key detail can shock the entire world. The evidence is carved into the rock, and that is putting it lightly. Machines find secrets. In the rolling plains of Salisbury, England, technology has just finished looking at something that experts have been getting wrong for hundreds of years. Using very new scanning tools and computer brains, researchers have mapped every tiny part of the massive sarsen stones at Stonehenge. What the computer found in those scans has left the smart people in total silence. The tool marks, the way sound moves, and the math between the stones do not match what people have been told. What is even more strange is what the machines found hidden in the way these huge rocks are standing. But things move fast, and the truth about Stonehenge is far more interesting than anyone ever thought. For a long time, one question has bothered researchers more than any other. How did people who lived a long time ago, who had no metal tools, no wheels, and no writing, manage to move stones that weigh 60,000 pounds? They moved these rocks over 150 miles and put them up with perfect timing for the stars. The site sits on a flat area about 88 miles southwest of London. When people first started studying it in the early 1900s, they found something that should not be there. It is a massive circle of stones built 4,500 years ago. To understand how old that is, this was built before the Great Pyramids were finished and before people had most basic tools. According to the way we thought humans grew up, this level of building was not possible. The site is made of a circle of huge standing stones, with some having flat stones on top. These are not just rough rocks, they are shaped perfectly. Some stand 13 feet tall and weigh 50,000 pounds each. The blue stones, which are smaller, weigh 8,000 pounds and came from Wales. The usual story says that farmers who wanted to honor their gods worked together to build this. They used animal horns and stone hammers to shape the rocks. They supposedly used logs and ropes to drag them across the land. Then they used dirt ramps to pull them up. Finally, they lined them up with the sun to mark the longest day of the year. Then, for reasons no one knows, they kept fixing and changing the site for 1,500 years. But engineers noticed something right away. Even with trucks and cranes, moving a 50,000-pound stone is a huge job. Without metal tools or wheels, it seems like it could not happen. So when new news came out in 2024 about how these stones were shaped and why they are there, everyone was excited. The big change came from a team of researchers who made a digital twin of the whole place. They used lasers and drones to catch every tiny bump on the rocks. They looked at the stones on top and the parts buried under the grass. Then they gave all that data to a computer brain trained to find patterns. What the computer saw sent a shock through the whole team. Under a close look, the computer found at least 5 different ways the stones were shaped. This is where things get really weird. The first way was just hitting and rubbing the rock with other stones. This is what you would expect from that time. It fits with other old sites, so nothing was weird there. But the second way shows something totally different. Along the flat parts and the joints where the stones click together, the computer found shapes that are too perfect. The surfaces only differ by a tiny amount over a long distance. This kind of work is amazing. One lead researcher said that the sameness of the stones is much higher than what you get from just hitting them with other rocks. The curve of the top stones shows a plan that needs very high math and careful measuring. The computer compared these marks to thousands of other old tools. The patterns do not match anything else from that time. Nothing at all. This perfect work suggests a way of building that we do not understand. It shows plans that were not supposed to exist for another 2,000 years. The next discovery showed that the stones were meant to do something very specific with the air around them. Mystery tool patterns. The third way of shaping the stones might be the most confusing part of all. Computer scans found something that had been hiding for thousands of years. When the computer brains looked at how sound moves through the stone circle, they found that Stonehenge was not just built to look good, it was built like a huge speaker system. People have thought this for a while, but the 2024 computer look proved it. The computer found that the exact space between the stones creates a special sound effect. When sound waves hit the stones, they grow louder at certain tones. Using digital models, the team rebuilt what sound was like inside the circle 4,500 years ago when all the stones were still up. The computer showed that voices or drums would have echoed through the stones, making a sound that felt like it was not from this world. Low sounds, like a deep voice or a drum, would have been very strong. But what makes this truly special is that it was not a mistake. The stones had to be in the perfect spot. If you move a stone by even 3 feet, the sound changes completely. The computer figured out that the chance of this happening by accident is less than 1 in 10,000. This means the builders knew how sound worked long before it was ever written down in ancient Greece. They knew how to put big stones in a way that made them sound like a giant hall using only old tools. This makes the discovery even more shocking. When the computers mapped the spot of every stone, they found something that changed everything. The stones follow math rules that are very old. The computer found special triangles, called Pythagorean triangles, in many spots in the build. That math rule was not supposed to be found for another 2,000 years. But the computer found these triangles in the space between the circles and the holes in the ground. This was not just one lucky triangle. The computer found at least 7 of them in the plan. Even more strange, the computer found that the builders knew about the number pi. That is the number that helps you measure a circle. The circle of stones shows this number with almost perfect exactness. For a long time we thought the Egyptians were the best at this, but it seems the people in ancient Britain were even better. The computer went even further when it looked at how the stones point to the sky. Everyone knows they point to the sun on the longest day of the year. If you stand in the middle, the sun comes up right over one stone. But the computer found that this is just the start. When the computer rebuilt the night sky from thousands of years ago, it found something that made everyone stop. Stonehenge tracks the 18.6-year cycle of the moon. This is one of the hardest things in the sky to follow. You have to watch the moon for almost 20 years to get it right. Yet, here it is, written in stone. The computer showed that the stones align perfectly with the spots where the moon reaches its highest and lowest points on the horizon. This is knowledge that was lost until modern science found it again. The computer said this could not be done without watching for a long time and doing very hard math. The way the skills changed over time reveals a story that goes against everything we thought we knew. Giant sound machine. The computer found something even more confusing when it looked at when the stones were put there. By looking at tool marks and how the stones have changed over time, the computer could tell which stones were new and which were old. What it found goes against the normal story of how people learn. The very first stones, put up 4,500 years ago, are the best ones. They have the most perfect shapes and the best math. These are the stones that make the strange sounds and have the perfect triangles. But the stones added later are not as good. The work is messy, and the spots are not as exact. By the time the last changes were made 3,600 years ago, the work was much worse than the start. This is the opposite of how it usually works. Usually, people get better at building over time. The Egyptians got better at pyramids. The Greeks got better at their buildings. But at Stonehenge, they started at the top and then got worse. It is like the first builders had a high skill level that the later people could not copy. It looks like they were trying to save a secret they were already losing. It is as if Stonehenge was built by people who already knew everything, not people just starting out. But the most shocking thing from the computer came from looking at how the stones were moved. The new research confirmed that the big stones came from 25 miles away, and the blue stones came from 150 miles away. But the computer saw something that people missed. When the machines looked at the shapes of the stones, they found that they were not smooth. They have bumps and uneven parts that would make them very hard to drag on logs. The computer ran thousands of tests. If you drag a 50,000-pound stone with bumps on logs, it will tip over or get stuck 92% of the time. Modern workers use special frames to move rocks like this for a reason, but the scans show no damage from moving the stones. The bumps and carved parts are perfect. This means either the shaping was done after they were standing, or they had a way to move them that we cannot explain. Moving them after they were up is hard because some shapes are in spots you cannot reach. This leaves us with a very big mystery. The bluestone mystery is even harder to figure out. These stones weigh 8,000 pounds each and came from a specific mountain in Wales. The old story says people carried them across hills and rivers. The computer found that this is even more impossible. When the machines looked at the blue stone circle, they found that the rocks were not just picked up from one spot, they were chosen from many different places. The builders went all over Wales to find specific stones with special features. Why would they work that hard for these specific rocks? Some people think they were chosen because they ring like a bell when hit. But the computer found something else. When the blue stones are put in the Stonehenge pattern, they change the magnetic field of the ground. It is a tiny change, but it is there. Could the builders feel that? Some think ancient people could feel magnets like birds do. If so, the blue stones were chosen to create a special magnetic space. But how would they know about magnets unless they already understood them? The secrets hidden under the grass show that the entire area was part of one giant plan. Ancient math codes. The digital eyes of the computer did not stop at the giant gray stones of Stonehenge. Instead, it looked deeper, scanning the dirt and the grass for miles around the circle. When researchers gave the machine high-tech data from the ground, it found things that had stayed hidden for thousands of years. We used to think Stonehenge was just a lonely circle in a field, but the computer proved it was much more. Beneath the soil are buildings that no person in the modern world has ever seen. While archaeologists knew about a few holes in the area, the computer located over 200 more. These are not just random pits, they form specific shapes that are invisible from the surface. The machine revealed that Stonehenge was actually the heart of a massive network covering many miles. It mapped out straight lines that connect these hidden spots to the main stone circle, stretching out in every direction like the spokes of a giant wheel. This changes everything we thought we knew about the site. It suggests that the entire region was part of one huge, carefully planned project. One of the most startling discoveries involves the land itself. The computer's analysis shows that the ground around Stonehenge was physically changed by human hands. Parts of the earth that look like natural hills are actually artificial. People moved an incredible amount of dirt, millions of pounds of it, to make the landscape look exactly how they wanted. This is a terrifying amount of work. We are talking about thousands of people using nothing but simple baskets and bone tools to move entire hills. The computer calculated that it would have taken years of constant labor just to fix the land before the builders even touched a single stone. This raises a deep question. Why would anyone do that much work? They must have had a master plan where every inch of the land had to be perfect. They weren't just building a temple, they were redesigning the world around it to fit a specific vision. This is where the findings become truly strange, almost like a nightmare. When the researchers combined the map of the land with an analysis of how sound travels, they found something no one expected. The hills and valleys around Stonehenge are not just for looking at, they act like funnels for sound. If you stand in a specific spot miles away and make a loud noise, the shape of the land carries that sound directly into the stone circle. Once the sound hits the stones, they reflect it and make it louder. The computer showed that the entire landscape functions as one giant speaker system. Thousands of years ago, a group of people could have been miles away making noise, and to someone inside the circle, it would sound like the voices were coming from the rocks themselves. It would feel like the ground was talking. This was a massive show for the ears and the eyes, designed to make people feel a sense of overwhelming power. The skill level needed to understand sound and land this well seems impossible for people from that time. The computer also found a confusing pattern in how and when the site was built. Usually, scientists use old pieces of wood or bone found in the dirt to figure out the age of a site. However, the machine found evidence that does not fit the normal timeline of history. When it looked at the marks left by tools on the stones, it found that the best work was done with a precision that does not match anything else from that era. The cuts in the rock are too clean, and the angles are too perfect to have been made with simple stone hammers. The computer compared these marks to 50,000 other ancient rocks across Europe. And the Stonehenge marks were totally different. They look like they were made by much later technology, even though the biological dating says the stones are very old. This is a massive logic puzzle that the computer cannot fully solve yet. Either our methods for dating the stones are wrong, or the builders had skills that were thousands of years ahead of their time. Some researchers are now considering the possibility that parts of Stonehenge are much older than we thought, perhaps 8,000 or 10,000 years old. The computer shows that the way Stonehenge was built does not follow the normal path of human history. It suggests a lost level of engineering that we are only just beginning to understand. The machine has peeled back the first layer of the mystery, but the data it found points to a past that is much more complex and perhaps much stranger than any history book has ever described. The more we analyze the site, the more it feels like we are looking at a technology we don't yet recognize. Even with these wild findings, there are still people who think there is a simple answer for everything: hidden Earth structures. Mainstream experts have their own ideas to explain these things. First, they say the math might be an accident. If you use ropes to make a circle, you might get those triangles without knowing what they are. They say the builders were smart workers who learned by trying things out, not by doing hard math on paper. Second, they say the sound might just happen because the stones are tall and in a circle. It might not have been planned. People might have just liked it after they built it. Third, they say the work got worse because people stopped caring about being perfect and just wanted to keep the tradition going. And finally, they say the dates from the bones and wood are very strong, so we should trust them over the tool marks. These are good points. The normal view is that Stonehenge was built by smart but simple people who worked very hard. But that view has a hard time explaining why they moved stones 150 miles. It does not explain why they picked stones that change magnets or sound. It does not explain the huge work done to the land or the perfect way it tracks the moon. The computer cannot tell us who is right, but it shows that the mystery is much bigger than the simple story we used to tell. So, here is the big question. What were they really building? Most people think it was a temple for the sun and for dead relatives. The computer data does not say that is wrong, but it says it was more than that. Some now think it was a place for healing. People traveled from very far away to come to Stonehenge. Maybe the sound and the magnets were part of the cure. But why put hard math in a hospital? Why track the moon so carefully? Another idea is that Stonehenge was a giant stone computer. It was a tool to track the sky and predict when the sun or moon would disappear in an eclipse. That would explain the math and why they kept fixing it for so long. They were updating the system. It would also explain why the skill level went down. Later, people were using a machine they did not fully understand. The most chilling idea to emerge from the data involves how these stones track time over very long periods. When the computer looked at every alignment at once, it found that the monument does not just track the seasons, it tracks cycles linked to massive natural disasters. One of the most important is the 18.6-year moon cycle, also known as the lunar standstill. This is not just a pretty sight in the sky. This cycle is physically linked to the movement of the tides and changes in the weather. Some scientists believe this cycle even connects to patterns of floods and earthquakes. The computer's analysis showed that Stonehenge acts like a giant alarm clock, letting people know exactly when these dangerous times are approaching. It was a tool for survival, built to warn the community before the earth and water turned against them. Stonehenge is not the only place that does this. Other ancient sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey also seem to track space rocks and comets hitting the Earth. This suggests a scary possibility these were not just separate groups of people living in isolation. Instead, there may have been one large, connected culture that possessed a deep understanding of the stars and the dangers they posed. They didn't build these stone markers for a party or a simple ritual. They built them as a high-tech record to keep humanity alive. They wanted to leave a warning for people thousands of years in the future, us. If this is true, Stonehenge was a hard drive made of rock, designed to last long after the people and their books were gone. It is important to remember that we have only seen a tiny fraction of what is actually there. Even with all our modern tools, only about 5% of the Stonehenge site has actually been dug up. The rest is still hidden beneath the dirt. Our current scanners give us small, blurry glimpses of what lies below, and the picture is disturbing. There are signs of hidden rooms, deep paths, and underground structures that have never been opened to the air. What is waiting down there? We might find more stones with carvings that explain the math of the universe, or even the tools they use to cut the rock so perfectly. Experts are afraid to dig because one wrong move could ruin the site, but as our scanning technology improves, we are seeing deeper into the darkness. Every new layer the machine finds makes the original builders seem even more advanced. The most uncomfortable part of this discovery is what it says about human history. For a long time, we were taught that the people of this era were simple farmers who were just beginning to learn about the world. But the data from the computer tells a different story. The builders of Stonehenge were masters of mathematics, astronomy, and acoustic physics. They understood how to shape the land to control sound, and how to align massive rocks with stars that are light years away. This level of knowledge simply should not have existed back then according to our history books. And because sites like this are found all over Europe and the rest of the world, we are seeing a pattern of a very smart, very organized ancient culture that we have completely forgotten. This leads to a big question. What happened to them? Usually societies get better at technology over time, but here, it looks like they got worse. The precision of the oldest parts of Stonehenge is actually better than the parts built later. It is possible that the people who lived there were not the ones who discovered these secrets. Maybe they were just trying to keep the knowledge alive, like people trying to fix a machine they didn't build. This suggests that Stonehenge might not be the start of our story, but the final chapter of a much older, more advanced one. We might be looking at the proof of a lost civilization that existed 10,000 years ago. Was this a survival tool meant to warn us of a coming disaster, or are we just seeing patterns where there are none? Let us know what you think about these wild theories in the comments. If you want to see more hidden history, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more. Could we be the ones who have forgotten how the world really works?